The Tempo Studio, Tempo Move, and Tempo Core each provide an all-in-one home gym solution, combining high-quality free weights with high-quality coaching, all wrapped together with AI tech that not only tracks your weights in reps, but also creates highly personalized training programs that constantly adjust based on your goals, schedule, sleep, and results. I've reviewed each of Tempo's products before, but since a massive amounts of new updates have changed the Tempo experience in many ways, I think it's time to come back to provide an in-depth look at what is really a unique home fitness experience. Now, Tempo is not for everyone though, and it does have its flaws as well. And my hope is that by the end of this review, you'll not only have a complete understanding about what Tempo is and what it does, but also if it would be a good fit for you. And if you're a fan of fitness tech or reviews that get right to the point without wasting your time, make sure to like or even subscribe to connect the watts to see more videos in the future just like this. So first up, let's talk about some of the differences between the Tempo Studio, Tempo Move, and Tempo Core. So the Tempo Studio was really the first and obviously largest version, featuring a great looking 42-inch 4K touchscreen, a 3D LiDAR camera for tracking your form, reps, and weight, alongside storage in the front, back, and middle to hold your weights, dumbbells, and barbell, and additional accessories. Because the Tempo Studio is by far the most expensive option and takes up the most space, it is also a lot less popular than Tempo's other options, which are significantly cheaper, since they use the camera on your phone and your own TV as the display. But there is a hidden benefit of that Tempo Studio that can make it an attractive option, and that is that it's the only option that allows you to use your own weights. And we'll talk more about weight tracking later on, but basically, because the weights that come with Tempo are color-coded, it allows the camera to automatically detect and track which weights you are using for each set, which is a really cool feature. But if you already have a lot of weights at home like I do, sometimes you might find it more convenient to use your own. And with the Tempo Studio, you can do that and it will still work, tracking your reps, and you can use the touchscreen to adjust the weights manually. With the other options like the Tempo Move, you can't enter the weights manually and so are sort of forced to use Tempo's color-coded weights. Now, the Tempo Move, like I mentioned, uses the camera on your phone, which as of right now only works with an iPhone, and it displays the classes directly on your television. So the whole thing ends up being significantly cheaper and is a lot more space efficient, and really is one of the nicest home gym setups that I've ever seen. The whole thing looks great within a house and doesn't really make a room look like a home gym at all. It's all just disguised within this storage box, which can open on either side with a magnetic flap to access your weights. There's storage for dumbbells in the back, and the core, which is what your phone sits on for it all to work, can be hidden when not in use. The core can also be removed so that you can place the weight storage box wherever you would like, and still have the core close enough to be connected to your television. And then for an even smaller cost is just the Tempo Core, which is basically the Tempo Move without that weight storage. Now, there are several options for each of these depending on how much equipment and weight you'd like to have, and I have to give it the Tempo. Everything that they include equipment-wise is extremely high quality. Each option comes with 2 adjustable Olympic dumbbells that weigh 7.5 pounds each and can be adjusted to hold up to 45 pounds. You can also order a Tempo barbell, which is also very high quality, and it should be noted that it is shorter than a regular barbell since it's designed to be more usable within a home, and so only weighs 25 pounds with a max adjustable load of 255 pounds. And Tempo also has a variety of other optional accessories like a folding squat rack, folding bench, and adjustable kettlebell. And although I've not tried these, given the quality of everything else that I've seen, I would guess that those are very high quality as well. Oh, and the Tempo Studio, the Tempo Move, and all of the accessories can be ordered in both light or dark versions so that they can be color matched, again, making them really well designed for the home. And now when it comes to tech and AI, Tempo ambitiously offers far more than others in its category. Some of this works really well and some still needs a bit of fine tuning. So as I mentioned, Tempo uses that camera either on the Tempo Studio or on your phone to track your reps and weight as well as analyze your form. So when you start a set, Tempo will use those color-coded weights to automatically update the weight that you are using, and this is pretty much always spot on. If you're in a really dark room, it might struggle a bit, but even with a moderate amount of light, it works perfectly. The rep counting is also really good, almost never making a mistake, though it will occasionally give you more reps than you did if you finish a set early. For example, let's say you're doing a set of squats and you finish your set early. Well, if you put the weights down and then stand back up, it'll usually count that as an additional rep. So you have to sort of learn how tempo works with the movements if you want to keep as accurate a rep count as possible. Now, tempo will also analyze your movement and help give you warnings or tips if your form is off. And to be honest, this isn't that great. For one, it'll only work on a few faults for a few movements, and even then, it's sort of a hit or miss if it catches it at all. I definitely wouldn't go into this thinking tempo will do a lot to fix your form outside of the coaching from the instructors. There is a pretty nice feature on a handful of movements like squats and shoulder presses that will show you your range of motion for each rep, and that can be useful to make sure that you are hitting your full range of motion on every single rep and not cutting it short as the weight goes up or if you get more fatigued. Now, beyond just tracking the weights that you complete for each movement, Tempo uses that information to give you weight suggestions during your workouts. And with the latest update, Tempo takes this much further by asking you on occasion after your set how many more reps you think you could have done. And you can answer this via your phone or even on an Apple Watch if you have one, and Tempo will take that info to help determine a training concept which is called reps in reserve, which is really just a smart way to help guide you towards the weights that you should be using to make progress, as in most cases people at home tend to use less weight than will actually give them results. And on top of all this, if you have a heart rate monitor on, Tempo will use that information as well, both for you to see visually on the screen, but also smartly to adjust your rest time between sets as needed. If you're doing a strength session, it's okay to have your heart rate elevated, but you don't want it to be so high that it impacts your ability to lift heavy weights. And so if your heart rate is above what is considered to be heart rate zone 4, Tempo will extend that rest time further by automatically pausing before your next set until it drops back down. And I think this feature is pretty cool, and you can just press continue on the class if you'd like to keep going, but the only issue that I do have is that there doesn't seem to be a way to adjust your max heart rate on Tempo. So these heart rate zones are based on the formula of 220 minus your age to determine your max heart rate, which could be really far off for a lot of people. And in my case, the formula puts my max heart rate at 185, when in reality, my max heart rate is between 205 and 210. So Tempo will often tell me to rest longer, even though I probably do not need to. Now, that's what's going on with the tech inside a class. Outside of class is where it gets even more interesting, because Tempo uses AI in some pretty interesting ways to help further customize and improve the member experience. Tempo has thousands of classes ranging from strength to hypertrophy to cardio and HIIT to yoga and mobility, and you can filter through all these classes by time or muscle group or equipment to find a class that is going to provide you exactly what you are looking for. And what I like about this too is that you can click on a class and see everything so that you'll know exactly what is included if you decide to take it. There are also a decent number of pre-built programs that provide more of a week-to-week progression for you to follow along to. And there are live classes that you can take as well, though those are fairly limited, with many of them being encore classes, meaning that they are pre-recorded but still done live with a group. But what is new and where the AI stuff really comes into play is in the custom programs. And here's how that works. So you can choose a custom program based on which muscle group you want to prioritize, and also if you want to only do strength work or a mix of strength and conditioning. Tempo will then provide you with a 4-week program starting with a baseline workout that you'll repeat at the end of the 4 weeks to see how much you've improved. And based on what you've selected, Tempo will provide a goal of weekly sets that you should be aiming to hit among the various muscle groups. So you can see here, since my priority for this program is chest, that is at the top and has the most suggested weekly sets. Okay, so Tempo will then give you sort of a weekly plan as well, but this plan will be adjusted as you go in several ways. So the first workout of each week is going to suggest for you a workout that will help you the most towards your priority muscle group. If I take that workout, it'll only suggest a recovery or mobility workout for the rest of the day. The next day, it'll likely still show the muscle groups that I trained are fatigued, and so will provide a class suggestion to help work on other muscle groups that aren't currently fatigued. And here's where it's designed really well, because let's say I don't take that class and just rest instead. Well, the following day, it won't suggest it again, and instead will suggest a new workout based on my priority. Again, my chest being the priority in this example, because it should now be recovered, and Tempo wants to ensure that I get those 15 sets done throughout the week. And if I do that, Tempo will continue to suggest workouts throughout the week, day by day, to help fill in the rest of my goal sets, also continuing to consider which muscle groups are fatigued from recent training. Going further, Tempo also allows you to view the suggested workout and then adjust it yourself by changing the time that you have available or even the coach that you prefer. So if I change the time and the coach, Tempo will find me another class to take that makes sense relative to my recent workouts and my training goals that fit in that parameter. And going even further, Tempo will adjust the weight suggestions for the workouts based on my readiness score. So utilizing any device that you have linked to Apple Health, Tempo will use your sleep, resting heart rate, and heart rate variability to give you a readiness score from 1 to 100. If your readiness is high, Tempo will suggest weights closer to your max reps in reserve. If you are more fatigued, Tempo will suggest weights a bit lighter than what you may be maximally capable of to help ensure that you don't get hurt and can come back more recovered the next day. And again, this can be manually adjusted as well when taking a class in case you feel that Tempo's readiness suggestion is not accurate for a given day. So a few thoughts on all of this. One is that I think it is pretty cool and probably the best and most comprehensive workout suggestion tool that I've ever seen for a connected device like this. And I think a lot of people who want advice on what to do for a given day will benefit a ton from this approach. However, there are a few hidden drawbacks here. One of which is that custom programs are based off the idea of hitting a certain amount of sets per body part per week and are not as focused on week-to-week progressions, whereas the regular Tempo pre-built programs are based on progressing you week to week. So overall, the custom workouts tend to be more randomly designed and likely less effective than the regular programs. But on the other hand, many people struggle to get in all the workouts of a regular program, and so they don't get the full benefit from them as they progress through them at a much slower pace than intended. And in that case, the custom workouts have the edge because they always keep you on track towards getting the correct volume based on your priorities, no matter how many workouts you got in the previous week. So it's a lot more adaptable and also customizable since you can adjust the time you have available for each session. The readiness score, I'm personally not a huge fan of though. I appreciate the effort and the idea, and while some people may benefit from it, I think that it overcorrects based on the limited information that it takes into account. For heart rate variability, or HRV, Tempo only reads off of Apple Health, which means that unless you enter your HRV manually into the Apple Health app each morning or take a manual test with your Apple Watch each morning, this is going to be really off because unfortunately Apple will only take some random HRV points throughout the night, which is going to end up providing you a number that is far from accurate for what you need to determine your true actual readiness. Even with an average HRV score that other devices can provide, that's not really something that I would suggest using to determine a single day's readiness and having a workout adjusted for unless you look at the bigger picture. And so unless you take your HRV manually every morning, I would not want Tempo to adjust my workouts based off of it. And even basing it off sleep, I may not have slept much one day, but I could still be recovered and feeling great. So I think that Tempo just sort of overdoes it here, basing your weight suggestions on all of this. And I think it would be much more effective and likely more simple just to ask you how you're feeling before the workout starts and then adjusting it from there. Now, finally, when it comes to new tech on Tempo, there is also a body composition scan, so you can get a 3D scan of your body with your phone to help you determine your body fat percentage, as well as additional measurements for various parts of your body. Now, I've tested a lot of these sorts of scans, and there are a few things to note. One is that it is likely going to be correct for most people on average, and it could be a very useful tool, especially if you scan the same exact way with the same exact clothes on each time. That said, if you have some muscle on you, especially for guys, I have found that these sorts of scans can be pretty far off when compared to DEXA or bioelectrical impedance scans like InBody. So while it may be a useful tool, try to take the information that it gives with a grain of salt. Now, before I talk about what I feel is the best part of Tempo, I do want to mention one more issue that you should be aware of, and that is the limitations around weight. If you are brand new to lifting, Tempo provides more than enough weight to help you make a lot of progress. But if you have any experience lifting weights, especially if you're a guy, then you're going to be pretty limited here. As I mentioned, the dumbbells currently go up to 45 pounds each. And even if you do get the barbell and all of the weights, you are going to be capped at 255 pounds with no options to go above that weight or even use your own weights. I mean, you technically can use your own weights while you take a class, but the weight will not be tracked on Tempo. And so if you are strong enough to require heavier weights than 45-pound dumbbells or 255 pounds on a barbell, then Tempo doesn't really provide you with a lot of the benefits of weight tracking and weight suggestions or the whole reps in reserve concept or any of that. And so for me, I had to take all of these Tempo classes for this review, but just use light weights and pretend that they were hard for me so I could see what Tempo would suggest in a variety of scenarios. But there is no way with how it is right now that I personally would have benefited from the classes given Tempo's limitation on weight. With that said, I do want to discuss what I think is the best part of Tempo, because look, Tempo's equipment is high quality, and the AI stuff I think is pretty cool, but where the real value from Tempo actually comes from is the coaches and the quality of their workout content. Unlike most home fitness devices, these coaches actually coach in the same way you would expect if you were at a real strength and conditioning facility. The methods and programs are up to date and sound. The reps and rest and volume and overall structure of the workouts are extremely well designed. Whereas again, on most connected fitness platforms, like Peloton being an easy example, they're not. And the coaches are all very likable. They know what they're talking about. And so it doesn't feel like you're watching a fitness show. It feels like you're taking a class. So when a long rest time is needed to actually get results, most platforms will say, screw it, people will get bored, let's just keep this thing going. And that's not good for your fitness. Other platforms will also say, hey, let's keep our mobility classes quick and short, moving from one thing to the next so that people feel like they got a lot done. Again, that's crap and not effective. But Tempo and their coaches do not do that, and they take the time to deliver real results, whether it's an appropriate amount of rest for a strength set or spending more time on a single stretch. But ultimately, I know that the time taking a Tempo class is worth it to build actual strength rather than just pretending to. And I hope that Tempo realizes this as well, because even though the AI stuff is nice, I would hate to see it come at the cost of coaching content, because it's really the coaches here that make this platform work and why I recommend Tempo as a great home fitness solution. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, this is Colin Jenkins with Connect the Watts. Appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next time.